The rain has kept the smoke largely at bay in the last few days. Tomorrow and Thursday, we expect that to change. A cold front is entering western New York from the northwest early tomorrow morning. That will reach downstate by tomorrow evening. The winds, as part of this cold front, are expected to bring significant smoke from the upper Midwest into New York State. DEC and DOH have issued an air quality health advisory for fine particulate matter, that's the PM 2.5 or the smoke particles, for Western New York, Eastern Lake Ontario, and Central New York. This is for tomorrow. So for Western New York, that's Cattaraugus, Chautauqua, Erie, Genesee, Niagara, Orleans. For Eastern Lake Ontario, that's Cayuga, Jefferson, Monroe, Oswego, and Wayne. For Central New York, that's Allegheny, Broome, Chemung, Chenango, Cortland, Delaware, Southern Herkimer, Livingston, Madison, Onondaga, Oneida, Ontario, Otsego, Tioga, Tompkins, Schuyler, Seneca, Steuben, and Yates. The air quality is forecasted to reach the unhealthy zone, and that is in the 151 to 200 range. So air quality will be in that unhealthy zone for everyone, not just for people in sensitive groups. In Eastern Lake Ontario and Central New York, the forecast is unhealthy for sensitive groups. So that's in the 101 to 150 range, as we all have become accustomed to these ranges. That is the unhealthy for sensitive groups range. The rest of the state, the entirety of the rest of the state, is not under an advisory, but it's in the moderate zone. So 51 to 100, so that's that yellow zone. So Commissioner McDonald will speak to that in detail in a moment, what that means for people. The advisories, I think, as everyone knows, are based on 24-hour forecasted levels. There will be spikes. As we saw last time, several weeks ago, there will be spikes during the day that exceed the 24-hour average, possibly into the very unhealthy zone of 201 to 300 or above. Thursday, looking ahead now, again, we are 2 days out from Thursday, so the forecast is less than certain. We are expecting the smoke to move into the Hudson Valley and potentially downstate into the New York City metro area and Long Island. There again is still some uncertainty as to that, but we certainly expect that smoke to continue its march through New York State. We expect most of upstate to be in the unhealthy or unhealthy for sensitive groups range on Thursday. So again, that's most of New York State. If that happens, if our scientists are certain of that, we'll put a new advisory out tomorrow morning in regards to Thursday. I do urge everyone, as we got into the habit of doing last time, to check our website, dec.ny.gov, where we publish maps, or of course, go to airnow.gov to get the most recent information for your particular area, zip code, or town. And now I'll toss it over to Commissioner McDonald to discuss the health impacts of what we will be seeing. Commissioner?
Yeah, thank you so much, Commissioner Seggos, and it's great to be with everybody this afternoon. So let me talk first about the why this matters, and then we'll talk about what you can do. And I think it's important to remember, yeah, we went through this on June 6th, 7th, and 8th. We had that brief event, and I think this is going to be somewhat similar in that regard to that event as well. When we think about this air quality index number, though, I think these numbers are quite frankly new to most of the general public. Generally, the higher the number, the worse the air quality. When we talk about 150 or higher, that really means the air is unhealthy for everyone, and this is what we're anticipating in particularly the western and central part of the state tomorrow. What I mean unhealthy for everyone is, keep in mind, there's certain people that are higher risk. And when we talk about the why, it's that particulate matter. You see that number PM 2.5. What happens is with that particulate matter is we breathe it in, gets into our body, goes down our windpipe into our lungs. When it gets into our lungs, it can cause inflammation, it can cause infection, and it can trigger people with asthma to have a problem. People with chronic obstructive lung disease can have a problem. People who have heart disease can have a problem as well because it's now into their lungs, and that's not what we're looking for. Keep in mind, bigger particles will be filtered out by our nose, but it's these really tiny particles that are really a concern for people. And that's the why of this is a concern, because it can really impact your lungs. This is why if you must go outside when the air is unhealthy, we talk about wearing an N95 mask. I happen to have mine with me. So, this is one of those things. We just have to keep on our person now is an N95 mask when the air isn't healthy. So if you must go outside, this is a really simple intervention that most of us know how to do. I think the other thing that's part of the why is I've downloaded the Air Now app, and I think that you can get this on the Apple Store or the Android app. You know, I have mine programmed for where I live in upstate New York, but I also have a program for all the places of New York because as a state health commissioner, I look at the state every day to see how the air quality is going. And I think these are just important tools. So you've got your app, look at the air quality. I do this every day now. Then I've got my mask in case I need to go out. And I think this is one of those things where it's just really important to understand the why. We're trying to keep ourselves healthy. Last time we saw this, June 6th, 7th, we did see a small spike in people going to the emergency department for that one day. We saw a spike in the New York City area. We saw a spike in the rest of the state. It wasn't something that was normal, which is all, a near doubling of people going. But there were small 3-digit numbers in New York City and then a mid-sized 2-digit number in upstate New York. What we're trying to do is really not see any change in that level at all here. Now, we do monitor the syndromic surveillance for the people who go to the emergency department every day. It's part of our normal monitoring of the state. So we'll know in a couple of days if there is an impact for this. But why we come forward and talk to folks is so we understand the risk and then understand what you should do. So what you should do is, hey, do I need to go outside today? If I do, I wear an N95 mask. I want to stop there because I really want to leave plenty of time for questions today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, commissioners. If any of the reporters have questions, please use the raise hand function and I will have you unmute yourself. We're going to start with Nicholas Spangler. Nicholas, go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, I guess, one, can you be any more specific about conditions on Long Island? And two, I guess the advice is to stay inside unless you need to. And I suppose that would include, I guess, avoiding like even passive recreation, like going to the beach. Is that right?
So I can talk quickly about Long Island. For tomorrow, Long Island is in the moderate zone. So today, for example, Long Island is moderate as well. Unlikely to see impacts tomorrow in the metro area or Long Island as a result of the smoke. On Thursday, we are becoming increasingly confident that, again, this will be a statewide event. So in other words, New York City Metro as well as Long Island. And that brings it into the unhealthy for sensitive groups or the unhealthy zone. We'll have more information about Thursday, likely tomorrow morning. So similar to last time, when you get into those numbers, we're urging people to limit outdoor activity. But I'll let the doctor discuss some of those precautions.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Seggos. And I think, just keep in mind, we're normally used to an air quality index less than 50, right? New York normally is around 35. We have pristine air normally. 50 to 100, though, really is acceptable. So for the vast majority of people, if it's 50 to 100, that moderate zone, the yellow zone on the airnow.gov, app, if you will, it's generally going to be okay for the vast majority of people. It's really only the extremely sensitive who are going to have a problem with there. And so, if you're someone who's extremely sensitive, you probably know that already. It's really when the numbers get much higher, you start getting above 100, this is when people really need to look at the situation for themselves and say, hey, what makes the most sense for me? What we're looking at tomorrow for Western and Central New York is mostly above 150. And that's where I think most people are going to say, look, if I don't need to go outside, I'll stay inside. Of course, you're going to stay inside. That means you've closed your windows because if you have the windows open, that isn't helping anything. You're letting the outside in. And I think those are sensible precautions people can take. Thank you.
We'll go to Eduardo Cuevas next.
Eduardo Cuevas, USA Today Network, New York. I was looking to just get a sense, in terms of when we can expect the numbers to ease or the air quality to ease downstate. I know you mentioned Thursday, but looking at the holiday weekend. And then the second question, if you could just walk through what those small spikes look like in the hospitalizations, both statewide and then the New York City.
So I'll take the first question. It's too early to tell what the air quality conditions will be like over the July 4th weekend. Smoke prediction is, as you can imagine, somewhat difficult. It's kind of unreliable after beyond 48 hours. It's something we're obviously looking at very closely, given the weekend and New Yorkers' interest in getting outside. We'll put that out likely tomorrow. We'll be a little bit closer to the weekend. I'll have something more to say about Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, thank you. And Eduardo, just to put a fine point on what we saw on June 7th is, really, we don't have data yet on hospitalizations. We were talking about increases in emergency department visits. That's what we can identify through our syndromic surveillance. So it was a little over 150 people who went to emergency departments in the New York City area for respiratory complaints. Around rest of state, it was around 80 that went to emergency departments. So we don't have data on hospitalizations. So these are people just went for respiratory complaints. We won't know for many months if they were related to asthma, because that's when we look at the diagnosis data. Keep in mind, when I talk about syndromic surveillance, we're talking about the chief complaint, the main reason someone presented to an emergency department. So we aren't going to have really data on the discharge for several months, because it just takes time for that to get finalized in the system. And I think it really underscores the point. If you think about our last event, June 7th, if you remember, the weather June 7th was quite frankly noticeable to everybody. I mean, everybody saw how different it was. And I think people just sort of looked at that and said, well, this doesn't look right. So I think people stayed inside. And I think what you should look at today is like, how do we handle this? And this gets to the issue of like looking at your phone, seeing what the air quality index is, decide if you need to go outside. And if you do, have an N95 mask on. I hope that helps. Thank you, Eduardo.
Next, we're going to go to Sarah Darmanjian.
I was just wondering, Commissioner, you had mentioned on Thursday that this might be a statewide event. Would that include the capital region?
Yes, again, we have less confidence 2 days out, but we expect a statewide event. Perhaps less so in Western New York, but with some increasing degree of certainty as to Central, Capital Region, Hudson Valley, New York City, Long Island.
Doesn't look like we have any other questions. Does anyone else have a question? Use the raise hand or the chat. Not, we'll wrap this up unless either of the commissioners has anything else you want to. Oh, we got one more here. Now we have Christian Alexander. Christian, you can unmute yourself. Christian, if the unmuting is not working, you can put it in the chat and I can read it. We do have another question from the chat. What can Western New York expect for tomorrow with regards to air quality?
So I can take that. Western New York, again, Western New York tomorrow is looking to be in the unhealthy range. Again, that's the 151 to 200 range. And that includes Cattaraugus, Chautauqua, Erie, Genesee, Niagara, and Orleans.
And then the question from Christian was, is in the New York City area, is this expected to be as severe as the last go around? And should we expect a stark change in visibility like the last time?
Listen, we're treating this seriously. The governor led off her 1:45 press conference today with a shout to the public about this issue. We're taking it seriously. We certainly see, as I said earlier, a potential for a statewide event with some likelihood of unhealthy or very unhealthy air across the state. Currently, we're tracking, again, for downstate, to be in the unhealthy to unhealthy for sensitive groups range. That would be less than last time, but the rule of thumb here is we know the smoke is coming our way. It's best to treat it seriously. Take the precautions you need to take, the precautions that the doctor outlined, and ensure that we're ready in case the air is either for an extended period of time at very unhealthy levels, or if there are regionalized spikes. Just follow the rules of thumb. If you don't need to be outside, avoid that physical activity. If you do, bring a mask with you. If you're using air conditioning, make sure you have your filter on or your internal recirculation on, and look to airnow.gov and dec.ny.gov for further updates.
There don't seem to be any more questions. Commissioners, did you have anything else?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
All
All
right,
set.
we will
Thanks,
wrap
everybody,
this
for
up.
joining us.
Thanks everyone for joining.